Hello, I'm David Hughes. Welcome to Your Perfect Body, the podcast of the Esoteric Teaching community. Today's selection is an essay entitled Manifesto of the Esoteric Teaching. The Esoteric Teaching is a global spiritual movement aimed at the ontological reorientation of humankind through the simple process of chanting the holy names of God. According to the ancient Vedic literatures, the source material of the Esoteric Teaching, human life is meant for ending the miseries of material existence. Contemporary society is trying to solve the problems of life by material progress. However, it is obvious to everyone that in spite of extensive material scientific progress and economic development, human society is not in a peaceful, happy condition. The reason for this is that a human being is essentially a spirit soul. The spirit soul is the background of development of the material body. However, the material scientist may deny the spiritual existence in the background of the living force. As soon as we accept the spirit soul within the body as the actual self, we are on the road to actual progress in solving all the difficulties of material existence. The body is changing from one form to another, but the spirit soul exists eternally. We can practically experience this fact in our own life. From the beginning of our material body in the womb of our mother, the body is transforming from one shape to another. This process is generally known as development or growth, but actually it is change of the body. We can understand this phenomenon with a simple metaphor. On this earth planet, we see the changes of day and night, and of the seasons. The more primitive mentality may think the sun is getting weaker, and at night they sometimes presume that the sun is asleep or dead. With more advanced knowledge, we understand that the sun does not change, but the seasonal and diurnal changes are caused by changes of the position of the earth planet. Similarly, in our lifetime, we experience bodily changes from embryo to child to youth to maturity to old age, and finally death. The less intelligent mentality presumes that at death the spirit soul's existence is finished, just like the primitive tribes who believed that the sun dies at sunset. Actually, the setting sun is simultaneously rising in another part of the world. Similarly, the soul is not dying, but accepting another type of body. When the body gets old, like the old garments, and is no longer usable, then the soul accepts another body just like we accept a new suit of clothes. The modern civilization is practically unaware of this ancient truth. They do not understand or care about the constitutional position of the soul. There are different departments of knowledge in different universities and many technological institutions to study and understand the subtle laws of material nature, such as medical research laboratories to study the physiological condition of the material body. But there is no scientific institution to study the constitutional position of the soul. This is the greatest disadvantage of material civilization. They are enamored by the glaring external manifestation of the cosmic body or the individual body, but they do not try to understand the basic ontological principles of their own experience. The body looks very beautiful working with full energy and exhibiting great traits of talent and wonderful brain work. But as soon as the soul goes away from the body, all this bodily activity becomes useless, null, and void. Even the great scientists who have discovered many wonderful scientific contributions could not trace out the source of the conscious living entity, which is the cause of such wonderful discoveries. The esoteric teaching is trying to teach this science of the soul, not in any dogmatic way, but in complete scientific and philosophical understanding. With the powerful ontological knowledge of the esoteric teaching, anyone can research the background and cause of this body in the soul's presence as perceivable by consciousness. Similarly, the presence of the supersoul and superconsciousness in the universal body of cosmic manifestation is perceived by the presence of the Supreme Lord, or the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth is systematically explored in the Vedanta Sutra, generally known as the Vedanta philosophy of Vyasadeva. Vedanta is elaborately explained in a commentary by the same author, and it is this which is known as the esoteric teaching. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of the esoteric teaching to understand the constitutional positions and relationship of the soul and Supreme Lord, or the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth is revealed in three phases of understanding, namely as Brahman, or the impersonal universal soul, Paramatma, or the localized universal soul, and finally as Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The individual soul is also understood in three aspects, namely first as the consciousness pervading the body, then as the spirit soul within the heart, and ultimately exhibited as an eternal spiritual personality. Similarly, the Absolute Truth is first realized as impersonal Brahman, then as localized Supersoul, Paramatma, and at the end as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Krishna means all-inclusive, or, in other words, Krishna is simultaneously Brahman, Paramatma, and the Personality of Godhead. Just as every one of us is simultaneously consciousness, soul, and person, this individual person and the Supreme Person are qualitatively one, but quantitatively different. Just like the drop of seawater and the vast mass of seawater in the ocean are both qualitatively one. The chemical composition of the drop of seawater and that of the mass of seawater are one and the same. But the quantity of salt and other minerals in the whole sea is many, many millions of times greater than the quantity of salt and other minerals contained in the drop of seawater. The esoteric teaching maintains that the individuality and uniqueness of the individual soul and the Supreme Soul are eternal and changeless. From the Vedic Upanishads, we can understand that both the Supreme Person, or God, and the individual person are eternal living entities. The difference is that the Supreme Living Entity, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, emanates and maintains all the other innumerable living entities. The same principle is admitted in Christianity because in the Bible it is taught that the individual entities should pray to the Supreme Father for supplying their means of maintenance and for giving pardon for their sinful activities. So it is understood from any source of scriptural injunction that the Supreme Lord, or Krishna, is the maintainer of the individual living entities, and it is therefore the duty of the individual living entity to feel obligated to render service to the Supreme Lord. This is the ontological background of the universal religious principle. Without acknowledgement of this principle and personal performance of the duties it inspires, there is chaos in human society, as it is happening in our daily experience at the present moment. Instead of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everyone is trying to become the Supreme, either socially, politically, or individually. Because of competition for this false lordship, there is chaos all over the world, individually, nationally, socially, and collectively. The esoteric teaching is trying to establish recognition of the supremacy of the absolute personality of Godhead. Humanity, human society, needs this understanding because this spiritual consciousness makes human life successful. This esoteric teaching is not a new introduction of the mental speculators. Actually, this movement was started by Krishna himself in the battlefield of Kurukshetra at least 5,000 years ago.